kind of week for me. Sometimes God just like cracks you on the head or maybe the heart, and you just melt. That's what I feel like. I've been having one of those weeks. I think part of it started yesterday. I went to our Kundalini yoga class, and just that recognition of spirit started. And sometimes when your heart is open, it just keeps opening up, and then you let everything in. It's really good. It's really good. I would like somebody to light the candles for me as one of our Sabbath things. Yeah, this sort of, all of them. I know you can do it. Last week, I talked about Sabbath, and this week too. So while Brian's lighting the candles, I'm going to mention that it's something we can all do just to create a little sacred space, a little space to rest in. So I'm having him do that for us. If I ever have the thought that people are unkind, all I have to do is hop on my bike and ride on the trail past the place where some sweet man has planted 1 million resurrection lilies on the bike path for us to look at. It blows me away every year when I happen upon them. And I'll give you directions if you don't know where to find it. It's the bike path down by the museum, the art museum. It's a beautiful metaphor also, the resurrection lily itself, because the way they work is they shoot up their leaves sometime in June, and I was very confused because we don't have those in Seattle. So the first time I saw them, I'm like, what? Are there going to be daffodils? And there was all these green shoots, and then nothing happened. I'm like, well, bummer. They die down, and then it's like out of nowhere, they just pop right up in August. And not just like 1 or 10 or 20, but like, I don't know, I think 1 million of them. If you haven't seen them, there really are. It's just a gorgeous thing. It's the picture that I put on the little handout I had today. That's a picture. That's just down on the bike path. So that's the metaphor I want to work with today, the resurrection. And the thing about resurrection and creation, and the quote from Ecclesiastes, "For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven." I was thinking about that, and here's the deal. At any time, everybody is at some unique to them different part of their life, right? Like there's a baby. We could have made our transition and have already been on the other side. And maybe you don't think about it so much when you're 20, but when you're heading up, I notice that I think about where I am in this whole creation thing, this whole spiritual and physical walk on earth. Think about where I am at. And I think about how amazing it is that while I'm at the part of my life that I'm at, somebody else is starting off having kids and having a new family. Somebody else has started school. Somebody else is ending their career and is retired. Somebody else is doing any number of adventures, beginnings of relationships, ends of relationships, continuing of relationships. And the point I wanted to stress is that when we keep ourselves with open-hearted or open-headed, you get a little crack on the head from God, the universe, and it reminds you to keep your heart open, then we can let it all in, and we can be present for each other for wherever step we're at. Sometimes it's hard to relate, for example, to somebody who's a year. But if we keep our heart open, we can. Now, I am really taken by this book I talked about last week, Sabbath, Wayne Muller. Just want to say that a lot of these ideas are from him. And I want to encourage you to read it or something like that if you want to. When I'm thinking about there's a time for everything, I'm thinking about that there's a rhythm of life. And the part of life that we don't always get so great in our culture is the resting part, right? We're really good at working hard. We're really good at pushing ourselves. And we are not so good at taking time. Last week I talked about different Sabbath practices, and I'm going to talk about some more. But I want to just revisit the Sabbath practice, that Jewish Sabbath practice, where on the Sabbath eve, when the sun sets, you stop. Every week, you make this sacred time and you stop. And you stop when the sun sets. You don't stop when you're done with your phone calls, or you're done with your list, or you're done at work. You stop because the sun has set, and you've set aside this time to rest. And it's not about serious. There can be plenty of fun, and it's not about not using electricity or anything like that. This practice that I'm talking about is to set aside time for your soul to rest, for your complete self to just rest. And man, let me just say, I am preaching to myself, because I recognize, especially as I'm getting on the second week, I'm realizing, well, I'm pretty good at resting every now and then, but I do not have a regular weekly checking in with myself Sabbath. And I realize that is something that I want to add. Hopefully next week I'll report to you that, well, yeah, I set aside 30 minutes on Wednesday or whatever. And it sounds a little jokey, but it really could be 30 minutes on Wednesday. It doesn't need to be a whole day. But it would be awesome if it was half a day or a couple hours. One of my friends who's a minister, she does one morning a week, just as a morning, because that's what she can do. And she does it from when her child goes off to school to lunch. And even the morning changes, but it's a pretty regular thing with her. One morning a week is Sabbath. And for her, the Sabbath is no emails, and she does a little reading that she wants to read about and has a little bit of time for meditation. So that's what her Sabbath is. So that's one practice. And I've been reading a lot about the Sabbath, and actually I've been reading some memories of people who grew up in that Jewish faith where they had that actual Sabbath, and the whole community stopped doing things. You know, I don't stop doing things at sunset. And then together they refreshed their souls. They had family time together. They shared meals. They had fun. They were present in a way that stopped them out of their rush life. Anyway, it sounded pretty good. It sounded really good. It reminded me for a while, one of the things we did in my family growing up with the big family, after I had moved out, I was the oldest, so there was a period of time where I would go back home and I was like the special guest. It was really fun. Go back home to dinner, and Sunday dinners were a really special, fun time for us. Like, we just connected, we just shared family time. It was great. So I'm a big believer in that. If you can work out a family dinner or a community dinner, whoever your family is, it doesn't need to be your family of origin. It can be your family of people you hang out with now. So let's talk about creation. The thing about creation is that it's ongoing all the time. Right? Something is always being created. Something is always shooting up. And it's a pattern. It's a rhythm. Where are you in your rhythm? Think about that. Where are you in your rhythm? Is there something being born in you? Is there something coming to fruition? Is there something blossoming? Is there something turning into seed? Just think about that. Creation is followed by rest, and rest is followed by renewal or recreation. And if we are too busy, we miss our rhythm. It's our rhythm, and my rhythm is going to be different from your rhythm and your rhythm. So if we're too busy, we're going to miss our rhythm. And just because the universe is unlimited, anywhere on earth, something will be being born and something will be letting go. Your balance has to come from within you. And it has to come from the center that I talk about in meditation. Go for the center of your being, the Christ self. That's where your rhythm needs to come from. So we want to stop and make sure that we take a little time to find out what our rhythm is, and then respect it, follow it. So here's a few more practices I wanted to talk about to help us find our spiritual rhythm. There's a walk, a Sabbath walk. So you set aside time and you walk for 30 minutes. And it would be a good thing to walk by yourself, because what you're going to do on this walk is walk when you feel like walking, stop when you feel like stopping. So you walk, you stop, you look, you walk again, you stop, you listen. You just follow your own rhythm. And you go to where you want to go. And if you're wandering around, you see where you get led to. It's a good spiritual practice. We all know that we have, scientists and all of us have studied circadian rhythms. The rhythms that are actually so ingrained in us that when we stop following a schedule, they kind of reassert themselves. Like if you were never to have an alarm clock again, you'd probably start waking up when the sun came up and go to sleep when the sun goes down. And I know that I've been lucky the past couple of years, and I pretty much never set an alarm clock. That's because I don't have to be anywhere at 6 in the morning. But I wake up, I pretty much always wake up now when the sun comes up. And I notice that, I wake up earlier in the summer and later in the winter, and that's okay. Unless I'm catching a plane. Yeah, I do have an alarm for catching a plane. But it's a real beautiful luxury to be able to do that. And I feel much better. So that's one place where I notice that natural rhythm is a good thing, helps me. I didn't know this. Oysters open their shells when the moon is high. The chambered nautilus forms a new chamber in its spiraled shell every lunar month. So if we stop working crazy hours and driving ourselves, skipping lunch and so on, we can return to our natural state. Now, I, just like you, have things I have to do and have to show up for. I'm not saying, throw everything out, but there's a way to get a little bit into that natural state. It's using the breath meditation. You follow the breath. It's like the most simple form of meditation. You give yourself the 5 minutes, and you actually just notice your breathing. You don't breathe in a special way, you just notice your breathing. So this is a Sabbath practice that we do here all the time, and I like to encourage anyone, if you're stuck in any way, place, shape of your life, go ahead and add 5 minutes a day of quiet and watching your breathing. You just watch it and Pay attention to it. Give yourself a little 5-minute, put a little 5-minute timer on. Give yourself that 5 minutes and watch your breathing. And that will help to reset your rhythm, your natural rhythm. Another Sabbath practice is just being out in nature. And being out in nature requires a little surrender. For example, I know that Roland and I were sitting in the house yesterday, and it was nice and cool, and we went for a little walk, and, there's bugs. And it was humid. It was still lovely, but going out in nature is a good thing. It requires a little surrender because it's not like that home, the home environment or the church environment where we control it and we're comfortable. And yet, if we hadn't gone out there, we wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been that nice experience of walking around. We just walked over by the museum, by the lake there, turning back into a lake down there. But think about that. So nature is healing. Almost any nature is healing. Even just walking outside downtown is healing because there's fresh air. You know that. It invigorates you. It changes things. And nature, in Des Moines, we're really, really so fortunate. There are so many places you can wander around, and there's probably even places that have less bugs, I think, than where I chose, just walking around outside. And at the same time, allow yourself to surrender. It's a good thing. It's part of the Sabbath, letting go. Henry Nouwen, who was a spiritual leader or a spiritual teacher who did a lot of beautiful things about teaching people to rest and have Sabbath, and he also founded a community where people took care of each other. He believed that the spiritual life was a pilgrimage from absurdity to obedience, from deafness to listening. So think about that. Your spiritual life, absurdity to obedience, deafness to listening. Being deaf to your spirit, to your soul. When we're deaf to our spirit and our soul, we do ridiculous things, the absurdity of it. We don't listen. And when we slowly teach ourselves to listen, then things just start to feel right. You know how it is when things start to feel right? It's like, wow, this feels right. And you don't even need to figure out a long, lengthy explanation. It's just that, okay, this feels right, because you've stopped and you learned to listen. You're listening to that inner spirit. I have 2 more spiritual practices for Sabbath. One is just prayer. Wayne Muller says prayer is like a portable Sabbath when we close our eyes for just a moment and let the mind rest in the heart. We all know how to pray, and sometimes one-line prayers are awesome. You carry around a little one-line prayer. Then the last one I want to talk about today, it's got a fancy Latin name, which I really enjoy, Lectio Divina. It's basically just reading a passage of Scripture and reflecting on it. So that's why I gave you that piece of paper with some Scripture on it and a picture. And I'm just going to read a little bit, and we're going to practice this together. All right. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. And I ask you just to close your eyes for a minute or keep reading, really whatever you want. And let your mind rest in your heart. And know that this was just a tiny, tiny little time for contemplation. And that you can take this time this week with this scripture or some other scripture or some other holy book. It doesn't need to be the Bible. It can be any book that inspires you and connects you to all that is. And remember that there is also a time to laugh and a time to dance. And so when we come together, a lot of the times it's times to laugh and time to dance, time to sing and be together. And here's what I wish for you, for all of us. I want to express again how wonderful it is when you get that knock on the head from whatever reason. Maybe you've stopped, or a little bang on the heart, and you get thrown off of your regular game, right? You get thrown off of your regular game, and you're willing to go, forget the absurdity and go for listening to what is around you and have fun and be awakened and let everything in. And I guess the last thing I want to say is that when Chris sang that song, Crazy Love, it was about all I could do to pull myself back into the present, since time traveling is also a good way to bang yourself on the head and the heart. And I was so enjoying being instantly transported to Evergreen College when I was 19. I was visiting a friend, and somebody was playing that song really loud from out of their dorm room. I was just walking out there. And at the same time, I was really here listening to Chris play and sing. And it was just really wonderful to have that open, to have my heart open, to feel like I was melting. So I invite you this week to whatever it is, maybe the next song he's going to play can knock you on the head and open your heart. Maybe whatever it is, maybe it's the caprese salad on a stick that you're going to try. That's going to open your heart. But how about this? For this week, we are going to be open for that little knock off of our regular thing to rest and listen. And for now, let's just take an offering for unity and see what Chris has for us. Chris and the band.